Hello, Jess. Welcome to the podcast. I'm so happy to have you here. How are you?
Good. Hi, Megan. I'm so glad to be here.
Yay! Your first time on Eat Blog Talk, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. I cannot wait to see you in a little bit. We're going to see each other at Flavor Media again this year. And huge congrats on your new cookbook. We'll talk about that in this episode. But yeah, just so excited about this conversation. Thank you for showing up and delivering value today. Before we get into talking about publishing traditionally, do you have a fun fact to share with us, Jess?
I do. So I have twin daughters, and they were born on my birthday, and we were living in Thailand at the time. So my 33rd birthday was spent in a hospital in Bangkok, Thailand, delivering my two
Whoa.
girls. Yeah.
Wow, that's so special all around. And
Yeah.
how did giving birth in Thailand go? Was that what you expected?
It was an adventure. They were my first, so I had no idea what to expect, but it was great. They have a really wonderful like private hospitals there and we had a doctor who was a specialist in multiples, and he just made us feel very supported the whole way through. And so we felt ready. I mean, both my husband and my moms were very nervous to have
Yeah.
us be
Yeah.
delivering their grandbabies so far away, but it was a great. We felt very supported, and yeah, and they were healthy and they did great, and yeah, here they are. They're 10. They're 10 now.
Oh, and now they're 10. Oh,
Yeah.
that's so awesome. Well, everything worked out, and that's kind of the
Yep.
end goal, right? Everyone comes out
Always.
healthy and happy.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, well, let's get into you. So, you have this amazing website. You just published a really beautiful cookbook. I've looked at it myself. It is gorgeous. So, to start, Jess, tell us just a little bit about your website, Inquiring Chef.
Sure. So I actually started Inquiring Chef in 2010 when my husband and I were living in Thailand. We moved right after we got married. And in truth, I just was looking for a way to keep in touch with friends and family. And it started, as so many of us do, as just sort of a journal and a record of our life. And so, but I was really into cooking. And so I took a ton of cooking classes in Thailand. The food there is spectacular. And I learned a lot of Thai style cooking, but kind of honed in on my own sort of sense of food. And I just wanted to keep pursuing it. I had been a vegetarian for a lot of my teenage years and into college, and then sort of changed gears and started opening up to different cuisines and learning more about food. And when we were in Thailand, there's a lot of dishes that use meat more as a flavoring. They cook delicious greens, delicious vegetables, and then you often have dishes where meat is kind of an accompaniment. There's plenty of dishes where meat is the star too, but it just kind of opened my mind to a sort of different way of approaching food, and that has taken me on this journey that led to the growth of my website, Inquiring Chef, which is not plant-based, but is really focuses on vegetables in a lot of the dishes and how to incorporate them in a really easy way. And that led me to writing a cookbook that was about that. That was not a vegetarian cookbook, but just had vegetables as sort of the star of the show.
And it's called Start with a Vegetable,
It's
correct?
called Start with a Vegetable. And the idea is really that when you're thinking about what to cook, if you start with a vegetable first, then inevitably you will make sure that the vegetables are at the heart of the dish. So the book includes meat and seafood. It's about 30% vegetarian, and every single recipe in the book has a variation to make the recipe vegetarian using very simple swaps. So I just wanted to make it sort of flexible for every type of eater. And yeah, the chapters are organized by vegetable. So it's like, if you have broccoli in your fridge, here's 10 ways to use it. If you've got that bag of baby spinach, here's 10 things you can do
Mm,
with it. So it was fun. It was a very fun exercise to create the book that way. And it really reflected sort of the way that I approach cooking in my own
mm.
home.
Has it changed the process, the way that you cook? Like after the cookbook was done, did you find that you were more able to look in your fridge and just pull out a veggie? And I mean, do you know what I mean? Like, did it refine your whole cooking process?
It totally did. It totally did. And it honestly, I think for me, having been blogging for 15 years, it was almost nice to have somewhat of a constraint on my creativity. I mean, I think it helped my creativity to have these constraints on how I looked at cooking. And so even since the book was completed almost a year ago, or my kind of piece of writing and creativity and recipe development was complete about a year ago. And I still find myself like looking at the carrots in my fridge and thinking, okay, what was something that I could do with these that I didn't do in the book? And yeah, it's been a really fun way to kind of reapproach my cooking on the blog and my cooking in my own house.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. I love the concept, and I can't wait to make some of the recipes. They look so delicious. So let's talk about your experience with writing your cookbook. What about when you first decided, I'm going to write a cookbook? What was kind of going through your mind? Like, is this going to be overwhelming? Can I do this? Were there hangups?
Yes, all those things, 100%.
Yeah. Yes to all of the above.
Yes. And of course, I have 3 young kids. I have my twins and I have a daughter who's now 6. And all of us, I think, are stretched so thin. We're trying to juggle all the aspects of our businesses. And yeah, I didn't know if it was the right thing to do. And I honestly didn't know if it was the right way to invest my time because it's unclear. Writing a cookbook, I think in my experience, is something that can help the brand, but not necessarily become a source of revenue for most of us. Now, some cookbooks just take off and people end up making royalties down the road for years and years and years, but I didn't go into it expecting that. So there was this balance of, is this something that I want to do and devote all of this time to, knowing that it may not ultimately be a direct revenue stream for the business. And that was a hard decision to make. But ultimately, I think I wanted the challenge. I wanted to sort of define my brand around this book and use it going forward to give me more opportunities to talk about these things that I value in cooking. And so far, I'm really thrilled with the way that turned out.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a massive undertaking. And I think a lot of people don't know that before they start. But you kind of have an inkling, like, this is going to be a big deal. It's going to take up a lot of my time and energy, and it's going to take away time from blogging, right? Did you consider that as well?
Absolutely. And it did. I mean, I really, there were times during this process when I just had to, I could not create new blog content. I just now, with the book having been released a couple of weeks ago, feel like I'm finally in a headspace where I can sit down and start thinking about what content I want to have in the next few months. And I was just winging it throughout, for about 2 years. I would have an idea and I would have a little bit of time and I would create it and put it on the blog, or I would put it on social media. But I couldn't even keep myself to my normal pace of work because I had to focus on the cookbook and I had to deal with anything that popped up from my publisher. So yeah, it really changed the way that my workflow went over that couple of years.
Absolutely. So if you are going into it, just know that your blogging life will be disrupted big time for probably more than you think.
Yes.
So how did you go about like just making the decision, like, yes, I'm going to do it? Because I know a lot of people tell you that you need this and you need that to get started. You need a massive platform. You need so many followers. And if you don't have that, you're not going to be successful. So what was the tipping point for you when you just made the decision to go for it?
Yeah. So I had been thinking about it for a while. I think those of us that have the expertise that it takes to run a food blog, surely most of us, it's crossed our minds at some point because we have the skill set to take the photographs. We have the skill set to write the recipes. We have an understanding of our audience, which is really appealing to publishers. But ultimately really the reason that I did it was because New Year's 3 years ago, my husband said, you should write a cookbook and I will support you and we will figure it out. And I said, okay, I think this is going to take our whole family being on board with this plan. And they were, and my kids have been great. And my husband has just been so supportive and never questioned it. I mean, I worked weekends, I worked nights. There were, times when I was really tired. So it was having a supportive partner who was on board with the idea, I think really tipped the scales. And I did look, a lot into doing self-publishing, but I knew that for me, design is not my strong suit. And I was very concerned about being responsible for the overall design and visual aspects of the book. The photography I felt comfortable with, but then how the layout of the book actually went, that just didn't feel like something that I wanted to do. And I loved the idea of having a traditional publisher and a variety of different proofreaders in that process. So when I started, I kind of said, I'm going to explore this, but if I can't get a deal with a traditional publisher, this isn't the path for me at this moment.
Yeah.
So that was good too, because I think like if I had been open to self-publishing, then I think deciding I want to try a cookbook, it would have happened no matter what. But I was very certain that just wasn't, self-publishing was not in the cards for me. So I figured I would try and see what happened. And then if it didn't work out, I just would pivot.
Yeah. Right. And it fell into your lap. I mean, it actually worked out for you. So that was kind of a sign. I love when people just make the decision, like, I am doing this. And if this is meant to line up, it is going to line up. And it sounds like it did. So that's perfect.
Yes.
Yeah. And how did you go about finding that route? Like, how did you find the publisher? How did that all go?
Yeah. So over the years, I had written down some resources that came from peers of ours, like, other people in the food space. Anytime I picked up a cookbook that I liked, I would sometimes make a note of, almost every cookbook has at the back an acknowledgements page, and almost every cookbook writer who has an agent has thanked their agent in the back and has mentioned you can always find out what publisher they used. So I had kind of been keeping an eye out for that information. I also went into it really wanting to use the resources I could access to make sure that the book was the best I could possibly make it. And I didn't want to do that on my own. So I first reached out to Diane Jacob. She is really well known in our space. She wrote the book Will Write for Food, which I think has been for a lot of us starting around the time that I did and that, you did, that she was kind of a big name, and she still is. And she understands the industry so well. And she now consults on cookbook writing. So Diane and I worked together really, really closely to create the proposal for the book. And that took about 8 months. So she obviously, she kind of said to me going forward that she estimates about 6 months to write the cookbook proposal. I didn't even know what one looked like. So that was so important to me in the process. And she walked me through every step, and we had frequent calls, and she proofread my work. So at the end, and we really went back and forth on potential titles, potential concept, how we present it. She helps you walk through a competitive analysis, which is so important because you need to prove to a publisher that there are books out there like this one that have sold, but that yours is different enough to make it appealing to an audience when they can buy other books in a similar genre. So Diane she was fantastic to work with. She was tough in the way that she really needed to be. Yeah. I always joked that, I want her to tell me like it is.
Yeah.
And she helped me refine that proposal. And then once I had the proposal, then I sent it around to agents because I also knew I wanted to work with an agent and have them advocate on my behalf. And that has been absolutely worthwhile in the process. So Marilyn Allen is my agent, and she is fantastic. She advocated for me, and she was responsible for trying to find a publisher and a home for this proposal. And she did it. She ended up finding 2 publishers that were interested, and she was able to negotiate the deal. And she actually got my advance to be double what the first offer was.
That's amazing.
Yes.
Wow.
So
it really paid off to have a good agent.
From the very beginning, she definitely made, most agents they get 15% of all revenue from the book. And she completely made it worth that in the very, exactly. And she's advocated for me all throughout the process. And it's just been so nice to have someone in your corner like that. Yeah.
You want someone who's truly going to stand up and advocate for you and believe in you and what your project is.
Yes.
That's amazing. So it kind of goes, you need to write a solid proposal, and that takes 6 to 8 months. I had no idea it took that long. I mean, I've heard they're pretty extensive, but wow. And then from there, you find an agent to support your proposal and find a publisher.
Yes, exactly. Okay. And of course, like you hear stories about people who have condensed that timeline, and they, if I were to do it again, maybe I would know the process and I could write my proposal really fast. But it really is, that's the point at which your proposal even includes a list of all of the recipes that will be included in the book. You typically have 5 to 10 sample recipes that you've written out in the style that you want them to be in the book. And so it was like a mini exercise in writing the book, which was very good to prepare me for the rest of the process. But yes, for me doing it the first time, it took about it took 6 to 8 months, and then it took about 3 to 4 months to find a publisher and get that deal signed after I started working with an agent.
Okay. And then once you're at the point of writing the book, I feel like the proposal has given you a good jump on the book, right? I mean, you've got some of it written, you have the recipes laid out, you have some of the recipes done. Yeah. So it's like you're not just starting from square one again.
No, and it's great with working with my editor. We both just were working off this document, and so there were a few places. The publisher that I ended up going with is an imprint of Norton called Countryman Press. It's a smaller imprint under Norton, and they were just really supportive of the vision that was laid out in the proposal. And so they didn't want a ton of changes, but of course our initial conversations were about clarifying things, honing in on how the titles would look for those recipes. That changed dramatically because how we presented them changed over time. And so it was really valuable to have that for all of us to look at and work off of as we were going through the process.
Yeah. So to kind of go back to getting started with this, did you feel like you had a massive social following to start? Because I know a lot of people do. And like I'll just ask you that first. Did you have a massive social following to start? Okay.
No. So far from it. And that was the other thing, Megan, like going into it, I had heard that I had people throwing out possible numbers like of how many Instagram followers you needed or TikTok followers to get a book deal. So again, I was like, this may not even be in the cards just for that reason. I had under 10,000 Instagram followers, or around 10,000 at that point, which I felt like was pretty good. I mean, of course, as we all know, it took a long time to even get there.
Yeah.
I had a really tiny email list. I had not spent any time on email. So I had under 5,000 email subscribers, and I don't even think I had a TikTok account at that point, and my Facebook following was small. My blog traffic was pretty high, so I've had pretty good blog traffic. So I had between 500 and 600,000 page views a month around that time. So I did have that to present to to present in my proposal as a way to promote the book. The thing is, from what I've seen, even going through this experience, I used Bitly links to track anywhere that I promoted the book. So I could see where I was driving, where people were clicking over to see the book. And it hasn't been the website. I mean, I've been getting, I mean, I think there is this idea that you need to have a social following, and maybe there's some truth to that. But also, I got the book deal without having huge numbers anywhere except on my website.
Right. And after your book has, been published and you've kind of gone through the process, have you found that your social following has increased and numbers have gone up all around?
Yes.
Okay.
And
I kind of assumed.
Yeah. And part of it, I think, is just that in the process of writing the book, I knew that I wanted to work on growing my social following in tandem with that. And so I definitely was successful at doing that. I mean, I really did focus on posting on Instagram throughout the process. So I'm now at about 65,000 followers on Instagram. Yeah, that's been great. And that has just, I think, happened. And some of it might be just kind of clarifying my focus on Instagram to align with the book. And some of it, I think, is just spending more time on that. So I really did focus on that.
Right.
But yeah, it turned out that those numbers were enough for the publisher to believe in the idea. I had heard from other people that you either need a big social following or a great idea, and that one of those can be the way to get a cookbook deal.
Yeah.
And
yours was a great idea.
I hope so. It worked. Yeah.
That's so great. I'm so happy for you, because that can be such a huge hang up for so many. Just like, I don't have 100,000 followers, so I'm not going to even start this great idea that I have, which is sad. If you have a great idea and you believe in it, you should pursue it.
Yes. And the world needs, we need those great ideas, and they need to become cookbooks. So definitely, I think if you have a great idea, it's worth pursuing it. I think I am a lesson in, like, no matter what your social following numbers are, if you have a great idea, get it out there.
Yeah. Some of those great ideas they're in your head for a reason, and they need to be born. And if they're not born, someone else is going to take that and run with it. So I think it's so important to just yeah, say this. Like, you need to put your great ideas out into the world. And Jess is here to tell you, yes, do it.
Yes, do it. Please. We want to see
Yes.
those. We want to see
Yeah.
those.
Okay, so once you had your agent and then you got a publisher and things started rolling, tell us how that process went.
So then it was about a year. The full process to write the book, take the photos for me was a year. And again, that definitely varies. I've talked to other cookbook authors who have had very different time frames, especially if there's something that you're wanting your release to align with, or a season. So, but for me, it was a year. And for me, that felt like the right time frame, especially because my book is about vegetables. I needed to make sure that I could get the
Oh.
vegetables that came,
Mm-hmm.
so the tomato chapter had to be shot at the end of summer when tomatoes were beautiful. So I knew I couldn't condense the time frame. I needed to have access to the produce that was in season then. So it worked out really well. It was such an exercise in time management over a long period of time. Um, for most cookbook deals, your advance covers all of the expenses that might come along with the photos, food styling, um, and mine did. So any resources that I wanted to hire to come in to help me, that came out of my advance. And I did end up I hired someone to help me with a little bit of styling on some of the harder shots, and I hired some help to come in and do dishes and help
Mm.
me prep food. All of that was I paid for, and it was worth every penny to make sure that I could get this done, especially at the end of the year when I was kind of in a crunch and I had a few photos left that I had to take. So I really needed the help. But then all the photographs are my own.
Oh, that's great too.
Yeah.
It's always interesting to see, like, some people go that route and some people are like, from the start, absolutely not. I don't want to take photos. But I always love it when bloggers take their photos because we just have that innate creativity with photography. Most of us do. So I love that your photos are also in your book. They're so
It was
beautiful.
hard, but it was like it was neat. And now holding it, it just feels like me throughout. I
Yeah.
definitely can see why if you had the budget to do it, you would hire it out because it is so much work. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm glad it worked out this way.
Yeah. And then once you finished officially writing, how was the editing process?
So great. I mean, I've had proofreaders that I've hired, but I've never had someone at this level of detail come in and proofread my work. And then also like sort of recommend improvements in the way that I write. And it has changed the way that I write all of my recipes.
Oh,
It's been so valuable. And yeah, it was fantastic. I mean, it was a lot more time. That was something that I didn't expect to take as much time as it did, but partly maybe because my editor was very collaborative. He would send me edits and we would go back and forth on them. So there was a lot of time that we needed to build in for that process. It was great. I used 40 volunteer recipe testers who tested every single recipe in the book before it even went to my editor. So already they had caught any quirky little things that
oh,
needed to be caught. Yeah. So then my editor was really just working on style and voice. And it was a really neat process. It was hard. And it's hard
yeah,
getting so much feedback. I would screenshot it and it would be so much red, every page would
right.
have so much red. So I had to be sort of mentally prepared for that. But
Yeah, you can't get overwhelmed by it. You just have to let it soak in and take the advice, right?
yep, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, the editing process, it feels like a lot of people don't anticipate the length of time that takes and also how just kind of grueling it can be. But I love that you took from it um, skills. Like, now you feel like you're a better writer and you can incorporate that into your blog. That's so cool. Just pulling skills out of projects like this. That's like the best thing ever because you're not just creating your project, you're also embellishing you and like making you a better blogger, honestly.
Totally. I mean, and I tried to, of course, when you're getting feedback like that, it's hard to not become defensive about your work. This is a creative work that I made and I stand behind it, but I tried to embrace all of it as sort of a learning experience for me. And I think that did serve me really well, and it made the process go really smoothly. But yeah, I mean, when in your life do you get the advantage of having not just my editor proofread it? They had other proofreaders on the team, so it went through 4 rounds of really high quality proofreading, and gosh, yeah, that felt like such a gift to have that many people look at it and give feedback.
Yeah.
So
It's a collaboration. It's not just you on this project. You have involved lots of awesome, highly skilled people.
totally, yeah.
Yeah, that feels so good. So it was released in January, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep, January 28th.
January 28th. It'll go down in history for you.
Yes.
And how has promotion been going?
Really well. A lot of that has, as a first time cookbook author, a lot of that is on me. And I knew that going into it. And my agent was really good at explaining that to me, that I would be expected and I should do, promotions on my side. So as I said, I did do, it was on my website from the pre-release process started in October. And so from October, it was on my website, it was in my emails, it was on social media. And so I tried to do as much of that as I could. And I think that really did help. I think they said that their goal was usually to have about a third of the books sold in the pre-sale period. And we did do that, which was great. But they also, my publisher has really wide distribution ability. And so they reached out to indie bookstores. They really helped promote it. So definitely like having them in my corner was great too. Since the book was released, they've done a lot of sort of PR outreach. So it's been featured in some magazines. I've been doing a lot of stuff locally in Kansas City where I live, and just was interviewed yesterday for a local publication. So that's been really fun. Yeah, it's been great. They didn't recommend that for my publisher. They didn't recommend that I do a book tour. Which was fine with me. I was very nervous to show up in places where I maybe didn't have an audience. So most of it has been done virtually, and that seems to be going really well.
That's great. How long do you anticipate the promotional process going? I mean, I know it's never ending. You're always going to be promoting your awesome work of art, but like the really heavy duty part, how long is that going to happen?
It felt like the first week that the book was released was just huge. Like we were really trying to get the word out as much as possible, because that's just a big week for getting eyes on the book and getting it featured. So the first week really felt like just such a push. Just there were so many things happening at once. And then now, even just now, 2 weeks post release, it's really calmed down and it's more like a trickle. The PR office at my publisher does keep saying, as you pointed out, this is an ongoing process. There will be things that come up, for years, hopefully, where I'll have a chance to promote the book. But, and of course, now that it's like a piece of my business, I want to give it a shout out as often as I can and make sure that that's just a part of ongoing promotions. So it's now, I think, I think going forward, hopefully it's just a small part of promotions is just a small part of the overall business.
Looking back over your journey with your cookbook, what is, I don't know, something unexpected, an unexpected part of the process, or maybe something that took longer than you thought, or just something that you're like, yeah, that was a surprise to me?
It's a good question. I think because I and most food bloggers write recipes every day, test recipes, photograph recipes, that I thought, oh, that'll be so easy. But then putting them together in a collection of 100 recipes and thinking about how they would all look next to each other and how the book would cohesively roll throughout all of the chapters was really different. It was a really different experience for me. And I had my initial list of recipe concepts was probably more than double the 100 that I narrowed down to, partly because I really wanted to believe in these recipes. I wanted them to live forever and me not to question why I put that one in the book. And that is how I feel. I feel very, very confident in every single recipe, but that was harder than I thought it was going to be.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think probably every cookbook author comes away with a different answer to that, right? Like some people say the photography was hard, the writing was hard. So it's always interesting to hear which piece of it kind of surprised you. So And then if you're listening on YouTube, I would love to hear in the comments if you have a hang up, like maybe you just really want to publish a cookbook and you have one of those hang ups that we've kind of alluded to. Tell us what it is, because, you can get past pretty much anything, like Jess is saying, and create your amazing product, put it out in the world. I think it's so important to do that. What other piece of the process do you want to talk about, Jess, and do you think is really important to share with people listening?
I can't emphasize enough how important I think narrowing down that proposal is. And even if I've heard people say, even if you self-publish, spending the time to create an outline and lay out what what the book will be, I think is worth all the time you invest in it, because it does make the rest of the process go so smooth. So, and definitely don't be afraid to, getting help and asking some experts to come in and help me refine this idea. It was worth the money. It was worth the time. It was worth all of that. So
Worth
yeah.
everything. Do you feel like people could do the proposal on their own, just kind of self-educate and research and get that done? Or do you really feel like if you're doing this for the first time, you need to get help and hire that out?
I think if you wanted to do it on your own, there are a lot of resources. I think you definitely could. I would say make sure that you have a trusted peer, hopefully somebody who is a great editor or who will give you the truth, you can trust to tell you what they really think, who can edit it. And then make sure that you understand the objective of each part of the proposal. There is sort of a standard method to writing those. And I would say it's really important to make sure that you follow that and you understand each of the parts and you have someone to read it and review it. And my agent, when I found my agent, she did help me refine it further. So there's always a chance that, again, if you have this great idea, you could write a proposal yourself and just start, you're just kind of not cold calling, cold emailing agents to find someone who's the right fit. Yeah. And so there may be a chance that someone would be willing to kind of help you further refine it too.
Yeah. And then monetarily, I know that not every cookbook author brings in the moolah like big time, but do you feel like monetarily it was worthwhile?
I probably, like I said, I to buy the food if I try to factor my time into the equation, there's no way on paper it would be um, financially. I would recommend it from a financial standpoint.
Yeah.
And definitely I went into it knowing that all of my advance I was comfortable spending in the resources that I would need to make sure that this was something that I really loved. And so hiring some help, even just help washing dishes and helping prep stuff, was worth the money to me. So yeah, it's yet to be seen. And so much of it I think is so hard to quantify, because if it helps grow the brand, if it helps give me opportunities to speak, and that could end up being really valuable. So it's yet to be seen. But
great answer. I love that. Yeah. Because so many times in our businesses, the things that are on paper don't make sense. And somebody with a really analytical, strategic mind would say, nope, not going to do it. Mm-hmm. But I don't think everything has to make sense to us. We just know in our hearts if something is meant to be put out there. Like we're saying, if you have a great idea, if it needs to be put out into the world. So the on paper doesn't always matter. You just have to go with it. This is going to help you. You have probably a knowledge panel now on Google. You can use this as kind of a giant business card to speak and to give yourself credibility and all of those good things. So there's so much that you can't quantify, like you said. Mm-hmm. So don't get hung up on the on paper stats, because that doesn't always matter. And I love that you followed your gut with this.
And I loved the process, Megan. I don't want to, you're right. You have to kind of look at some of these, so many things that we do for our businesses have to be about the bottom line. And that's what will keep our businesses thriving. And I wouldn't have done this if I didn't think it would benefit the business as a whole eventually. But I love the process. I really wanted to do it, and I am so glad I did. And yeah, I learned so much, and it was absolutely worth the experience of seeing how it all played out.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I'm so happy for you. Thank you for sharing your story. And every story is unique, even if it's like if we have 10 interviews in a row about cookbook publishing, every single story is going to be unique. So this brought its special things, and we're just so grateful that you were willing to share the process with us, Jess. So thank you for being here. And
My
I hope that
pleasure.
you sell 1,000,000, jillion, trillion copies of your cookbook in the next months and years.
I hope so too.
Do you have a favorite quote or words of inspiration to share with us?
I don't know if it's a quote or but it's something that I always keep in the back of my mind. And that is, if you're not failing, you're not trying. And certainly in this process, there was rejection and there was getting news that I didn't want to hear. And that's sort of part of daily life of being an entrepreneur and running your own business. And anytime that comes my way, I just think that means I'm trying. That means I'm trying something new and putting myself out there.
Oh, I love that. What a great message to end on. We will put together a show notes page for you, Jess, with everything we've talked about today. If you want to go look at those, head to eblogtalk.com/inquiring chef. So tell everyone where they can find you. And of course, mention your cookbook again and where people can find that.
Yes. So I am Inquiring Chef everywhere. And my book is Start with a Vegetable, and it is available pretty much everywhere too. So you can find it in local bookstores, online, and at your library, hopefully.
Awesome. Well, everyone go check it out. And thanks again, Jess, for being here. Thank you for listening, food bloggers. I will see you next time.
Thanks so much, Megan.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this topic, be sure to watch the video shown on the screen. See you next time.